Welcome home. Two words that veterans crave for and don't always hear. You've now joined us on episode 1 of the Welcome Home podcast. The podcast is all about welcoming home all of those that have served, service members, troops, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, whatever we call ourselves. There is a day where we come home. And that is the start of the transition to this big, scary world we call the civilian world. As veterans in the civilian world, it's complicated. It's not as simple as the military, and that's why we're here. The Welcome Home podcast is all about sharing the stories of times in service, the transformation from troop in boots to veteran in the civilian world, and the lessons learned along the way. This podcast is for veterans, it's for family members, it's for civilians, it's for anybody and everybody that has struggled during this transformational period. We are joined here on our very first day with my co-host, Dylan Sessler, Army, National Guard, soldier, couple deployments, sniper, he'll talk to him himself. And also, we're really excited to have Danny Maher on the program here. You'll know him from Vet TV, you'll know him from Irreverent Warriors, but today we're going to get to know Danny and why the Welcome Home message is so important to him. So, Dylan, please introduce yourselves to the audience that don't know us, and then we'll introduce Danny.
I'm Dylan Sessler. I'm a 15-year veteran of the Wisconsin Army National Guard. Recently took a sniper section slot, so I'm managing a sniper section now. Still currently serving. 2 deployments to Afghanistan. On the side, I do mental health coaching, so I do a lot of active work with veterans, military members, on understanding how to better develop mental health solutions for themselves and others. And now I'm here doing this podcast. So just trying to give back to a community that's very much given to me.
Danny, who are you for those of you that don't know you, and why are you here?
Probably here because I'm better known as Donny O'Malley. And that name usually takes me farther than Danny Maher does. But I am probably here because coming out of the Marine Corps, where I was an infantry officer, did 2 deployments, one to Southeast Asia, one to Afghanistan. Coming out of it, I published a book. It was a dark war comedy with a message about suicide awareness, but specifically prevention. Then I started a nonprofit called Irreverent Warriors, focused on suicide prevention through community. And then started Vet TV, Veteran Television, the Netflix of the military, telling our stories our way. And yeah, I'm assuming that's why I'm here.
No, you all those reasons. So before we even start, I do want to thank you. I'm a total fanboy. There's not a lot of people that I'm like, oh, that's the guy that does the thing.
Thank you.
And from years of seeing Facebook posts to, watching a couple seasons of A Grunt's Life. So this weekend, you and I met in person about 2 months ago at the Military Influencers Conference, the MIC in Vegas. I did my very first hike 2 years ago here in Milwaukee with Irreverent Warriors. It was one of the best days I had in 2021. I can say that. There's a lot of days that in our lives we forget, and I can't tell you how important that day was. And the fact that was 18 months ago, and there's people I talk to on a weekly basis that I met that morning.
Wow.
And so, like, my background, 18 years in the military, toured Iraq in 2006, 2007, and I did another year in Gitmo, most of 2015, end of 14 through 15. I'm your ideal client, and you probably hear it every day. You supported me in times I needed support in all the right ways, right? It's the humor, it's the dark humor, it's the micro transitions that we go through, right? And this weekend, it's taken me about, 3-4 months. I binge watched Let's Talk About the War. Wasn't even that long. I mean, it's like maybe 90 minutes of programming. And but I had to mentally prepare myself to watch it and be in the right space. And I'm glad I did, especially the final episode. We talk about reintegration, and that's what this podcast is all about. So that's it. It is what people know or don't know along their journey. So, you talk a lot about dark humor, even the light side of things. What are things that you have learned from a more global perspective, right? Because you had your individual fighting position and your humor and the vet TV and the hikes. What have you now learned through all these years of working with veterans in this space? What are common themes you're seeing that wouldn't otherwise be easily understood or read from, the perspective of the VA or the DOD or, name that crappy fucking movie that we think of when it comes to military?
What are things I've learned? I mean, so many, but one that I'm pretty, I'm getting more and more, I don't know if passionate's the word about it, but that alcohol is the most consistent theme in the downfall of a veteran. If I were to make a generalization, alcohol is without question the most consistently damaging part of someone's life. And I hope to encourage more and more people to decrease their dependence on alcohol, even if they're just depending on it for a little bit of social lubrication, which is the majority of how I used it, used it. But I want to encourage a movement away from alcohol because it makes you blind. That's what we want. That's why we do it. And that blindness is messing us up really, really bad. It leads to bad decisions. Those bad decisions lead to less happiness, more depression, more loneliness because your bad decisions are pushing people away. So you're less connected to people. So you keep drinking and you drink yourself alone. And then all of a sudden now you're alone. You don't feel like that you're of any value to other people. A lot of times because you're a selfish fucking asshole. And other people don't think you're of value to them. And then you finally drink enough alcohol to have the courage to blow your own brains out. And that right there, I'm really going to be hammering home the rest of my life, getting other people to move away from booze.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of guilt.
It is.
I've seen it many times.
And I'm a former alcoholic who now doesn't drink. So I've been through it.
Congratulations.
I'm now that I'm on the other side, I'm like, you guys got to get over here.
Yeah.
Way better over here, I promise.
No, that you know what? I had no idea where that question was. I felt like Michael Scott there, where it's like, sometimes I start a sentence, I don't even know where it's going. That's where I started with my right? And that's interesting. That's interesting because of all the things you could have picked, right? From your individual fighting position to all the veterans you interact with on hikes, all the veterans you interact with at Military Influencer Conference, or even the veterans you're shooting Vet TV with a lot, not 100% veteran cast, but quite a few veteran casts, right? And you're reliving these things and working this through it. It's interesting that of all things, kind of goes back to the basics.
Yeah. I think part of the problem is that alcohol is so embedded in military culture.
Yeah.
I mean, it's embedded in American culture. It's like,
for sure.
When you watch the game, what do? So you
have a booze. Oh, what was the biggest? Correct. What was the biggest story about the World Cup? That Budweiser had $17 million worth of booze that they couldn't sell.
Yep.
That was like the biggest story of day 2 of the World Cup.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. But yeah. It's embedded in world culture, American culture, especially military culture, especially the Marine Corps, who we're proud of the fact that we're a bunch of drunk assholes who were started in a bar. Like, it's proud of that.
What was the tavern called?
Ton Tavern.
There we go. November 10th. I know for November 10th because you guys wouldn't let me forget it. And here's the deal. Okay, even to this point, I was on a Marine Corps base in Iraq. I was at Camp TQ. And November 10th, we got 3 beers.
Yeah.
And on Veterans Day, we got 3 beers. And when you haven't had a beer in 6 months, 8 months, 3 beers 2 days in a row, dude, it was a rager. I mean, plenty of guys had hard booze they got from KBR and everybody else, but to have no shit American beer on ice, that was a big day.
Yeah. So for those reasons, it's hard to now completely change your thought of that substance. Because it's like, no, this is a good, great thing that brings about joy and good times and relaxation and a release of my anxieties. Like, I love booze.
What was it that pushed you to kind of see this for the first time in your own journey?
I had finally, I had embarrassed myself drunk, for 15 years, doing stupid shit that you do when you're a drunk dude. And I always just thought that was, as a part of drinking, as a part of life. It was always something to laugh about, like the stupid text messages I sent, the stupid things I do, the stupid thing I said to someone, that brawl I got in. I did so much really wild, crazy shit that could have got me really hurt, killed, in trouble with alcohol. And it was always fun that I'm fine. And then I finally embarrassed myself in a huge way in front of Irreverent Warriors and my company. And I sat in shame in my room for a week after that. And all I wanted to do was drink and just decrease these feelings of shame. And I was just like, no, buddy, you're going to fucking sit here. You're going to marinate in this shit. You're going to think about this. And I'm like, you know what? Every time I have ever embarrassed myself, let myself down, let somebody else down, hurt myself physically or morally, or hurt somebody else morally and physically too. Every single time, I fucked up a paper, a test, work, it was because of drinking. Not just being drunk, but being hung over the next day.
Yeah.
And sometimes hung over for a couple days. And it was like, I had already decreased my drinking because I had to be such an obsessive workaholic, starting with the nonprofit and on. But so I decreased it. And so when I drank, I tried not to drink as much. I didn't drink as often, but I would still have a couple shots before bed to kind of wind me down. Mm-hmm. And after this one time, I'm like, I have so much that I'm responsible for right now. So many people depending on me and looking up to me. I cannot ever make poor decisions like this again. And the only way to guarantee that I don't make decisions like that again is that I just cannot be drunk. And I haven't been drunk since.
So is it no drinking at all now, or no? Or is there a limit?
I'll have like a Truly or a mixed drink if there's nothing else to drink.
Yeah.
It's not like Frank the Tank. I have one and I can't stop.
Yeah.
But I've had, I don't know, maybe 20 drinks in a couple years.
Okay.
Never more than probably one at a time, maybe two. But yeah.
Did you replace that almost, I guess, that addiction to alcohol with that workaholic mentality, that entrepreneur kind of mentality of building these venues and these arenas of, Vet TV and Irreverent Warriors? Did you kind of put yourself in a place of, I'm going to work myself to, kind of step away from this issue in my life? Is that how it went?
I was kind of already there. Like I was already responsible for these organizations. So I think it might be inaccurate to say that I became a workaholic to get away from the booze.
Sure.
Because I was already a workaholic.
Sure.
I mean, I had already decreased my drinking at that point.
Yeah.
That was it was then that I realized that I can never be drunk again. Can never, ever, ever happen again. Like drunk, losing my ability to make good decisions, and especially the way alcohol turned my decision making, that can never happen again. So that was the main thing. And I used to be proud of, let's get drunk and make bad decisions. I was one of them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 38 years old, and I'm like, fuck. When, at what age is getting drunk and making bad decisions no longer cool? And never was. We just didn't know that, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, but no, that's it. I struggled, so I got back from Iraq in May of 2007. Went back to working for I worked for Black & Decker DeWalt. I made it almost a whole 90 days, right? Because at the end of the day, my boss had changed, the job had changed, but most importantly, and I didn't realize this till years later, I changed. I was gone for 18 months, and coming back and selling power tools really doesn't fucking matter in the grand scheme of things. When you came from a place where decisions actually mattered. And then I spent the next 9 months touring the country with a band. It was awesome. Ooh. And then I was like, I'll go work for my, and I was, booze and drinking, women. It was a good time. We had a great time. Dude, it was so great. I was 23 and homeless, living in a van with 5 of my best friends. And every night was a new town. And if we were in town for more than 3 days, it was like, it's been 3 days. We gotta go. Sorry about your Baton Rouge. Got to go. Right?
That sounds so fun.
Right? Exactly. And at the time, when I was 23. 23 was great. And then I went from that to, okay, I'm going to be an adult. And I started working for my dad's company, bought a house, got a girlfriend, got a dog. And 6 months later, no job. My father laid me off because, 2008 was a hell of a time to be working, right? Got laid off 2 days before Christmas. Girlfriend left me. And then I'm like, you know who's always available and ready to talk? My buddy Ryan. You know why he's always available? Because he's the bartender. And it was 6 months of that pattern of, okay, I don't have a job, so I got no reason to wake up, so I'm going to sleep in and fuck off. And I had money saved up still for my deployment, and I'd always been good with my money, and I had credit cards, whatever. Well, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you wake up, you just kind of hang out, whatever. It's like, what is it, 6 o'clock? Time to go to the bar. You go to the bar, and then all of a sudden it's midnight. You're like, I'm going to go get some breakfast. You get home at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. You watch some TV. It's 4 or 5 o'clock, and then 6 months. 6 months of my life was gone because I didn't know where to start other than going to the bar. Mm. And I remember the first 6 weeks I was home, even back in 2007, I'd spent 41 out of 42 nights in a bar. And this was, it was a bowling alley bar, not even a good bar. And I would buy, I'd buy like $200 rounds for like 40 people and be like, I don't give a shit. I got so much fucking money. Came home from deployment, had like, 20 grand in the account, 30 grand. I was baller.
That's so funny.
The challenge is, I go back to some of those places now. Same people are there. I went back to this bar I worked at 10 years ago I worked there. I went back there on Friday after an event because, I was lonely, right? And I even put it on Facebook, hey, when you're feeling alone, go back to where you knew where it made sense. I went back to the bar I worked at, sat there. I didn't even finish my beer because I'm like, you know what? I almost had to go there to remind myself that this is where I came from, not where I'm going.
Mm. Wow.
So this was 4 days ago, right? Obviously I haven't evolved beyond, but to that point, right? It's that simple. And again, nothing bad or crazy didn't happen. I didn't get drunk. It's like in my head, I'm like, I'm just around the corner. I'm going to go stop there. No big deal. And I had to go there to be like, there's a dozen people in this bar. I know personally 6 of them because they were here 5 years ago when I stopped bartending here, or 8 years ago, whatever it was, is however long it's been now. And it's veterans and civilians alike. But to your point, yes, in the military culture, it is prevalent. It's there, even in our tradition. Look, a couple months ago, or not even a couple weeks ago, a month ago now, was a Marine Corps ball, and every veteran from every age goes and hangs out and tells old war stories in an alcohol-induced environment, and that's normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, we beat up the alcohol topic quite a bit. I mean, again, this podcast is for veterans and family members to understand a lot of these deep-seated values and beliefs that only they come up to the top, they come to the surface, and we only see them when they're here. But there's all this below, right? With me, it was a lack of camaraderie. I didn't have my battle buddies to my left and my right. So where do I go? Well, I go somewhere where there's people, right? And there's always people at a bar.
Yep.
And in your case, it's like, yeah, alcohol is there to enhance the fun, right? It's putting the gasoline on the fire.
Yep.
And keeping the fire going, right? To Dylan's point, when you brought up about, you didn't become a workaholic afterwards, you didn't replace it. It's like you got it completely out of your life, and then you're like, oh, look at this world on the other side, because replacing is not great either, whether it's exercise or work. It's like you have to, like you said, you had to take that week of detox to work through those feelings, because otherwise the alcohol numbs the feelings, and we all do it.
Yep.
One of the things I saw in the last episode of Let's Talk About the War is in something I've also gone through. It's the idea of, I hate the word help, I just get rid of it from my vernacular, but support, and looking for support before you need support. One of the things, I actually wrote, you talk about social connections save lives, whether it's the hikes, seeing a counselor, getting in veterans groups. The challenge is often we don't look for those things until
too late.
We're already not in a great place. Now it's like we're almost digging out.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes. You sunk far.
Yeah. So how do we, as a veteran community, get together and do those things? Because, the veteran communities of the past, the American Legions and VFWs, are very alcohol-based, very, be tough, buttercup kind of mentality. So obviously you're out there doing it. What else do we need to do in the veteran community where it's not a safe space, right? It's the opposite. Hey, we're going to put you in uncomfortable positions so that you can grow. What do we need to do different?
I think there's a bunch of things here. I love these questions so much, by the way. This is some of my favorite stuff to talk about. For one, I think we need that when you exit the service, and it's one thing, to stay in the reserves or stay in, be in the military like part-time.
Yep.
I don't know how to advise people in that situation.
Yep.
I'll figure that out eventually. But right now, what I have been trying to articulate is to put the military in your past and to now look to your future and to think about who you want to be in 5 years and 10 years and see it like it's a movie or a show. Okay? In 10 years, I see myself with my 2 kids are going to be of this age. I'm going to their sporting events and their dance recitals and music and all this stuff 3 nights a week. We're doing a family trip every Saturday, a big vacation once a year. I'm at this level in this job, in this industry. Like, you got to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Design it in your mind. And once you see that, then that becomes your new identity. And generally, all of your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors will emanate from what you identify as. And if you are constantly identifying as a Marine, as a soldier, even as a veteran, you're identifying as a part of your past. Mm-hmm. That is not your future. Your future is, I am a C-suite executive in a company in this industry because I like this industry. This is where I want to be. Or I want to be a math teacher in a high school. And I want to at least be the junior varsity coach in 6 years. And I want a varsity coach job in 10. And if that means I got to move schools, I'll do it. But I see myself as a varsity coach. And that's your new identity. So letting go of an old identity is, I think, the number one step. And then creating a new identity for yourself. And with the new identity, you now have new thoughts, new behaviors, new plans. Your calendar looks different. The way you spend your time looks different. The way you design your home looks different, right? Like, this is the only room that has any military stuff in my home. You walk through my home, you would have no idea that a military guy lives here, because that's my past. And so creating this new identity, I think, is everything. And along with that identity is figuring out what brings you joy. And I think if everyone put more time towards finding the moments when you feel joy, then you'll get closer to finding your new identity. So it's like, there are things that make you happy. Right? A lot of things can make you happy. But joy is something totally different. Joy is, woo! Woo! Yeah! That's joy. How often does anyone fucking feel that? Okay? We watch sports all the time. Well, I don't anymore. Most guys, most veterans watch sports.
Yeah.
Okay? And you're watching other people feel joy, work insanely hard, and feel incredible joy when they make the sack, catch the pass, score the touchdown. Joy, joy, joy. When do we ever feel it?
Yeah, no, it's interesting you bring that up, because what you said, that joy, first thing I thought about was the last Packer game I went to.
Was what?
Was the last Packer game I went to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 13-time world champions, no big deal. Go Pack, go. But you're right. And actually, Jordan Peterson talks about this, and one of the issues that males in particular have with pornography, and why males have low testosterone, is because they're watching other people do what they want to do. So now they've lost the sense of doing the thing themselves, rather watching other people. So whether it's watching porn or watching sports or MMA, right? If that's your world, you're not living. You're getting off, literally and figuratively, right, to other people.
Yeah. They're
living out their dream.
Yep.
So you're right. You're right. Like whatever. There's a couple cadences like that, right, about how beer makes you happy. Right. You're right. There's a huge difference between happy and joy. And the other thing that you said there that's interesting, I going back to the sports analogy, is what do you do that brings joy? Not watching others, right?
Yep.
Like, I'm a father now. Dylan's father. Do you have any kids? Married? What's your... Okay. So doing stuff with... One day. There you go, right?
Too young.
Too young. How old are you?
I'm 39.
I'm 38. That's right. Dylan's what, Dylan? What are you, 33?
Yep.
32. And you got, like, how many kids you got now?
I got one and a stepson.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought it was more than one.
He's mine.
Yeah, all intents and purposes. No, spending time with my daughter brings me joy.
Yes.
Right? The thing that I do, and watching her brings me joy, because that's something I have a direct correlation over. And that's interesting you bring about the house. Same thing. You go to my house, you'd have no idea I'm in the military except for my office. Mm-hmm. Now, a little bit different with my company, because we're a veteran-owned junk removal company. It's all part of the branding, similar to probably how it is, obviously, with Vet TV and Irreverent Warriors. You're into it, and what you said is true. I recently got out of a relationship for a myriad of reasons, but one of the things that she brought up to me was, why is it you identify as being a veteran almost first in all the things that you do and say, and it's like your justification for being the way you are. And exactly to your point, something I'm glad you brought it up, because being fully vulnerable and transparent, I struggle with that, right? It's in a lot of ways, it's like my greatest accomplishment, and yet I didn't do anything. But there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about Iraq. It just isn't. Suicidal and homicidal ideations have gone away over time with a lot of work. The need to surround myself with only veterans has gone away. The need to identify and be veteran first and angry at the world has subsided. But this idea that, I'm a vet and I wear camel pants, that's still all day, every day. I mean, I wear a belt that I bought at the PX en route to Iraq every day. I remember I paid like $36 for it as an E3, thinking, man, I don't know if I got $36, right? 16 years later, I still wear the same belt, right? Doesn't go as tight as it used to, but you know, it's that mindset, and that's interesting. What you're talking about is right, limiting self beliefs, because that really is. If you are a veteran, there is limiting self beliefs, and to touch on your point about the active duty versus reserve world, I know nothing what it's like to be active duty, where you're like, okay, 3-4 years, 5, 8, 10 years, whatever, it's been full commitment to nothing. You know, I joined the reserves knowing that I had a slot to go to Iraq. I always have one foot in and one foot out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even this weekend, I had drill this weekend, hence the no beard. I'm rocking the stash, totally out of regs, but that's all right. Because it's only the reserves. No one's going to give me shit, right? And even this weekend, putting my uniform on Saturday morning, watching Vet TV over the weekend, not a shameless plug. I watched it because I really wanted to watch, getting ready for today. I'm like full fucking hua, let's go mode, right? I had a girlfriend years ago after Iraq tell me, you're an asshole after you play Army till about Wednesday. And I was like, I'm just being me. Right? But I was a platoon sergeant, and I was just like, yeah, what do you mean you get fucking shit done? Get it done. Like, she told me that. She's like, I don't talk to you till Thursday because you're an asshole for 3 or 4 days. And I was like, that's probably not wrong. Yeah. You know? Because you it's that microdose, and right? It's like, I don't even like going to drill most days, but once I'm there, I'm like, fuck yeah, right? I don't want to wake up on a Saturday morning, but once I show up, it's like, I don't want to leave.
Yeah.
So funny. Right? So that's the challenge of being, you know, a lot of active duty guys will give reservists shit. And it's like, you guys are all and then nothing and then all and then nothing. It's a tough battle for us because we got 2 careers, or we're going to school and the military. Or you're going to school, and then the military is like, oh, by the way, you have to go to this bullshit school for 2 weeks, which 2 weeks isn't a long time, but 2 weeks in the middle of a semester that fucks up 6 months of your life is a long time.
Yep.
Right? So your 4-year degree turns into 6 or 7 years. Throw a deployment, a divorce, a fucking, you know,
PTSD.
Anything else in there?
Yeah.
PTSD, you know? And so that is a struggle for reservists. You know, it's like, obviously we're not deploying nearly as much, and now much more low battle rhythm. But it's tough when you never can fully commit to stuff. When people are like, oh, hey, I'm getting married in 13 months, 15 months. You're like, yeah, I have no idea if I've drilled that weekend or if I'm going to be in this country that month.
Yeah.
You know, even the active duty world, you guys have a little, or at least in the traditional Army, you have a pretty good idea where you are battle rhythm, right? You know, kind of the 2 years that you're going to deploy, or the windows, right? Or you're gone all the time, so you're never really you're never back home. You're just gone, always gone.
Yeah, that information just doesn't get down to just a regular soldier. I think anyone below E7, you really just don't get that information in the reserves or the Guard.
Yeah,
that battle rhythm is kind of E8 and above. Those are the people that know, and just whether it's due to OPSEC or lack of communication, that stuff doesn't reach us. So like, you know, go back to your discussion of like, how do I craft my identity when I'm in the reserves and in the National Guard? Yeah. We have to do that. Like, we're forced to do that work, the Monday after drill, right? The Tuesday after drill. And we have to do it every month. And the ones who aren't good at it are the ones that are the most quiet, right? Those are the ones that usually will not show up to drill. They won't show up on time. They'll struggle when they're there. But, you know, we in the National Guard, not to say we're any better or any worse, but we have to be forced into the situation where I can't have this identity of being in the military and come home to my family and my kids and treat them the same way because I get results here. I get a result that is probably not good, right? When I come home and I act like I am, you know, when I'm in the military, like my wife has been to a military ball with me recently, and she's like, you're you're different. And it's like, cause it's the first time she's really seen me with my soldiers. And I got a bunch of savages, right? I got a bunch of snipers who, their fucking job is to kill people. And so like I don't treat them like they're babies. I don't treat them like they're kids. Like I treat them like they're grown ass men who are ready to blow someone's head off if they need to. And this is her first experience watching me in that scenario, and we're not kind about it. So we have to be able to craft that identity, but I think it's almost even more intricate than just looking out and saying, well, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to be, for me, I'm going to be a TikTok influencer or an author. It's how do I look at the ways I act with people and interact with people, right? For me, what really changed my life, following my suicide attempt in 2015 was recognizing what core values do I actually understand about myself and how do I utilize them, right? I was empathetic to everybody else, but I didn't have an empathetic bone in my body for myself, right? Like I could not be that for me. And when I think really, really good soldiers come home and start to actually give a shit about themselves, that's what they start turning around. They turn that switch on of like, here's what respect is. I give it to everybody else. Well, now I have to give it to myself. Here's what empathy is. I have to give it to myself. Here's what compassion is, and kindness and appreciation and gratitude. I have to give all of that stuff to myself. I've given it to my soldiers, my leaders, like all of these people around me for years, but I've never given it to myself. And I think that's where that identity really becomes solid and tangible, where they can look at themselves and say, wow, I actually appreciate myself for the first time. And, just like you did, Danny, say to themselves, I can't get drunk anymore. I can't do that to myself because I respect myself too much I can't do that. I can't allow that. And so that's where I think, we in the National Guard and the Reserves kind of have access to something that's really powerful, and that's community, right? We have people around us constantly that are looking at us and judging us. Hey, you're kind of an asshole when you're not in the military, right? Like we have family and the structure that doesn't know what the military is like, that looks at us almost in a shameful way and forces us to accept kind of like this guilt and this shame, this underlying guilt and shame in society that doesn't exist in active duty. Because I've been there for some time to know that difference doesn't exist there, right? You can get away with some shit on active duty that you can't get away with on National Guard. Because even when you're on duty in National Guard, they're always like, the community's watching, right? They're right out your back window, right? The drill floor is literally looking in the backyard of 16 different houses. So you're like, you can't be a bunch of savages and assholes in the lawn. You have to do things right and do it for the community. And so like, there's always this kind of give and take of, here's this guilt. Remember, don't be stupid, right? Here's the shame. Don't be stupid. It's not that same thing of like an active duty military base with the same 6 bars outside a post that everybody knows that's okay and safe to go to, right? This is very different in kind of the civilian world with National Guard drill and reserve centers. Like, it's just a different way of crafting identity, and I think we're forced to do that more. So I think less people kind of lose their way, because I think there's more understanding of how to actually approach crafting identity.
Wow.
And like you said, we have to show up every Monday morning individually to that other part of our life.
Yeah. Sometimes Sunday night.
So, well, yeah. I mean, well, the challenge is when the active duty world, it's like from the day you join, and even when you're reserve, whatever, and you're going through all these motions together. You go to basic or boot, right? You go through all the uncomfort or the discomfort together. You get, you kind of know the guys you got promoted with because you get promoted with them, right? And then, right, you'll maybe see them later in your career, and it's like you're going through this, you get deployments and you come home, and all of a sudden your ETS is different than somebody else's ETS, and then boom, they drop you, and then it's you.
Yep.
and then thankfully in the Reserve and National Guard, we have those micro doses consistently. But like for me, it's been 18 years. I had a buddy I served with. He just retired after 23 and a half years. He's like, I don't know what it's like to not wear this uniform once a month. And it's like me, I got 18, not even 15 months left, 16 months till I hit my 20 years. And I'm like, I'm gone. But then what happens my one weekend a month that I'm used to not, being gone? Even COVID, I was used to being gone 2 or 3 weeks a year, every year for us school. And it was like my break from the civilian world. I can go play Army. And Army is simple.
Yeah.
Show up on time, Control F, pass your stupid PT test, don't be an asshole, don't come in the gate drunk. Right? I mean, that's kind of, you can pretty much graduate every military school with that's it, right?
Yep. I love the Control
F. I own a
F
business.
thing.
I got 20 employees. Yeah, Control F. And if you're really bad, Control Shift F. Like if you could search an Adobe file, you could pass military school.
Sure.
Right? But
Facts.
Facts. But until you have to go to the field and practice real world, and then
Not sniper school. I can tell you
not
that right
sniper
now.
school. Actually,
that won't help
I only went to one Marine Corps school, no computers. All actually had to memorize it. I was like, what is this shit? I did fine. It was non-lethal weapons instructor course at Fort Leonard Wood, and it was put on by an old gunny who was just angry, and it was inter-service. And we even had a guy from Singapore, maybe? Anyways, but so inter-service, and there was even a couple DOD cops there, whatever. But it was Marine Corps, and I was like, what is this? No computers, no Control F. You don't memorize shit. You don't hand jam it. I was like, this is the worst.
Old school.
Old school. I know. And this was, I don't even know what year I deployed. That would have been 2013 or 14. I went to that school. Actually, one of the best schools I've ever been. Second best military school I've ever been to.
Oh, wow.
And I won the Gung Ho Award for being the most, just for being obnoxious. Like,
It's motivated.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, you're spraying OC spray, pepper spray? Let's go. I'm being tased? You're going to hear about it.
Fuck yeah.
Oh, we're doing riot control? Let's fucking go. Because when you're doing Op 4, you're like, I'm going to go as hard as I can. And then afterwards, you got to put the gear on, and you're like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm going to punch somebody. I love that school. I just was overly aggressive because I could.
Probably loved it.
Yep.
Oh, my God. There was this big no-shit Marine, because I'm an E6. He's an E3 or E4. Big fucking guy. And he was on, like, embassy detail. Right, and this guy, and I'm 6'4", I'm not a small guy, but he had been like 6'6", like 240. He's like, dude, you're fucking annoying. And he's also like all of 21, talking shit to me. And I was like, let's fucking go. So whenever we lined up to do stuff, I was like, dude, let's go. He's like, I'm gonna whoop your ass. I'm like, I don't fucking care. I'm going at you. I'm like, I don't like. Again, I'm like 31, which is old as fuck in the military, 30, 31 at the time. I went so hard at that fucking cat. Whoop my ass every time. But I was like, let's go. I don't fucking care how big you are. I want to, if you're going to go, like, go all in. Anyways, yeah. But to that point with the Marines, it's like going to fucking prison. If you don't go after the biggest one. Also, inside of a bar outside of Leonardwood, I called him or his buddy Devil Dog. He fucking lost his shit on me. And I did it just because I knew it was going to fucking irritate the shit out of him. Yeah. And he couldn't, like, he was so mad. So mad. That's what I love about the Marine Corps. There's no doubt. Army will lie to your fucking face. Marines, no. It's all, you know exactly what they're thinking because they're probably going to say it to you.
Yeah.
If not swing first. Nothing but love. I also spent a year on a Marine Corps base in Iraq, and I found out quick, fast, and hurry, don't call a fucking a Marine Corps NCO Sarge. Not a huge fan of Sarge.
No.
Doesn't bode well when I'm a shit specialist with dirty uniform. I'm like, all right, roger that, Sarge. Did not, that conversation didn't end well for me. But fuck that I knew. I was 22, whatever. And I'm glad he did again. You know what? No good stories end or start with a salad. It's more of a shit sandwich.
Yeah.
All right, now that we go a ton of tangent. What else? And now that you say, okay, so you're 39, you got Vet TV, you've been highly successful being really, if I think about who's the advocate for veterans, you're the guy, right? I was excited to have you on, obviously, the podcast. But no, you're the guy because you're not running one of these nonprofits just throwing money at problems. You're not preaching about what we should do or what we could do or what Congress needs to do. Like you're out there doing it. I've experienced it firsthand, whether it's embracing Vet TV and just watching it and kind of doing my own micro therapy sessions, right? Individual, 10, 12 minutes where I have to now take a step back and think it through, right? And process some of the shit I've gone through. Or the hike, which was, like I said, one of the best days I had in the entire year of 2021. What's next for you? Where are you going? What is that, right? The veteran thing is in your past, right? I don't call it veteran thing, right? It's obviously part of you, but where is Danny going in his life?
My first priority is in building the vision of Vet TV that I have had for many years. And it's been very hard to build that vision because this is a really, really freaking hard business to run. It doesn't matter what the business is. Succeeding in entrepreneurship is incredibly, incredibly hard. It's like, most businesses die within a year. Most businesses don't make $1 million. Most businesses definitely don't last 5 years.
Nope.
But when the business is television, when the business is an art form, and when it's what I believe to be the hardest art form to succeed in on the planet, then it's really hard.
Yeah.
And when you just started learning the art form at the same time you started the company,
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah.
And then when COVID happens, it shuts down our ability to produce shows.
Yeah.
So my first priority is to build this vision of veteran television that continues to make television shows that recreate, parody, and celebrate the military experience for those who have served, right? So it's going to continue to be for us, by us. It's our stories, our way. And my initial dream was one show for every MOS in the military. All right, so that's
Hey, BHAG, baby. Big, hairy, audacious goal. Let's start there.
Yeah. And, obviously it's not about the MOS. It's about a character that has to achieve something within that MOS, or a cast of characters.
Yeah.
So anyways, so there's that. I also, I want to create productions that I want to do more documentaries, for one. My focus, my number one passion is comedy. It's because that's how I live life. Like I'll watch horrible, tragic things happen, and I will see the humor in it.
There's a bit in there somewhere. There's got to be.
It's there.
Dylan's hating this, for the record. Dylan hates comedy. He's not a funny guy.
Who said that?
As an example, one of our guys popped an IED and blew his legs off, and one of his legs flew right by all the Marines' heads, but one Marine specifically. Like, it kind of nicked him. Right? The guy's leg as it's flying at hundreds of miles an hour. And then that Marine was then having nightmares where this leg keeps flying at him. This dude's PTSD is the leg coming at him. That's
a good joke. It's a good joke.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even a joke. It is the pain, of the horrible, fucked up nature of what we do, at least in the grunts. And that part of combat, seeing the worst of humanity, it's like, and the pain is where I find the humor. And, but not everyone sees it like that. Mm-hmm. It's just how I'm wired. And what I want to do is tell documentaries that, or tell stories in the form of docs that have some degree of pain, but then have triumph. And the focus is on the triumph through the pain. The focus is not the comedy. So that's another thing that I want the company to do. I also want us to publish books. And so anyway, my focus is in growing this company to be bigger. I want more veteran filmmakers making more things, giving artists more opportunities to do what they love, but especially in the form of movies and television. And then for me, my own personal desire is in music and dance as an art form. That is what when I think about the last couple years, and this is part of another bigger part of what I want to do with this position that I'm very grateful to be in, to be in a position of influence of others. I looked back at where has the majority of my most intense joy come from in the last 3 years. And that has been music and dance. If I have the ability to create a life for myself where I can create music and create and perform dance, then I can. And if I don't, I'm a coward. Anything less, I'm a fucking coward. And I don't live like that. So
is that like a traveling show?
Long term, yes.
Yeah, I mean, in my head, the first thing I'm thinking there is you do Vet TV the musical.
See, that I would love. What I would want to do is create something similar to what the South Park guys did. So the South Park guys created the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a play and a musical.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah. And
that right there, I might be ready for that in like 15.
Okay.
15 years.
Trey Parker. Yeah. And South Park wasn't even supposed to. South Park was just something for them to do. Basketball and doing movies was going to be their primary focus. And then they got distracted by 25 years of South Park.
Yeah.
Because it stuck.
Because it worked.
Because it worked. Yeah.
It was a machine that was built around them that had to produce this many shows every year.
Well, even with South Park, what's interesting there is the fact that they got like 6 days to kick those episodes out. That's why everything is so timely. It's not when you look at The Simpsons, they're shooting those 6 months in it, or not shooting, but creating those 6 months in advance. South Park has about a 6-day turn on episodes. That's how they started. And then when got in with Comedy Central, they're like, we need you to deliver 18 episodes in a crack. And they're like, no, that's not how we do it. So it went from 2 guys doing it to building an entire business around doing it, because being socially relevant and timely was one of the top things. And that's why South Park has been as relevant as it has been, because they're hitting you almost like a news cycle. Like you're hearing about it, and then they're already taking shots at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And then also, look at South Park. If you look at it 20 years ago, 25 years ago, whenever it came out, it's like no one thought that had legs. Right? What is this? Animation. You think about some of the best shows over the last 20 years, they're all animation. You got South Park, Simpsons still around, I don't know how great it is, but Family Guy, right? You think about the things that are quotable and the things you remember. It's like these shows that they pushed the bounds, and even with parody. Like when you started singing song and dance, I'm thinking, they had the traveling USO shows, and it's like first to fight for the right, and but if you had a no shit in person Vet TV style, I always want to use the word broadcast because I got a radio background, but style of show that was traveling, like for me, a non play going individual, I would absolutely love it, because it's like, well, those are my people up there, right? I don't know shit about Hamilton, but I know those guys, I know those cats. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's the other reason I Dylan and I often, up until this point, we just sit down, hit the record button, and we just jam. Yeah. And when we talked about doing this podcast and turn it into a longer form thing, it was, let's ask a handful of questions and see what happens. Mm-hmm. Because, the answers you're giving so far, I would have never guessed. I could do all the research in the world and not come up with where is this conversation going. And it's a little bit of the point behind the podcast. There's this idea that there's this homogeneous population when it comes to veterans. It's like, it's like, no, we were all individuals at one point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We happened to join this fraternity of warriors, whatever you want to call it. But when it comes down to our core, even me with junk removal, I'm obsessed with junk removal. I have been as a kid, right? You want to sing and dance. I can't do either.
I want to do poetry.
But, right, and he wants to do poetry, right? Like my art is the spoken word,
Yep.
right? This is my art. I grew up, I wanted to be a sports announcer, and then I got into radio. And then I convinced myself I didn't have what it took to be a podcaster. There's too many podcasters. No, this is what I love. I'm a natural introvert. I don't like big rooms and big crowds, but I love conversations. I work things through. My PI index is Maverick, and it says I talk before I think, which I'm like, why don't we all do that, right? Like, it's a great way to live your life, right? And I talk out problems, and I tell people all the time, every other Monday at 11 a.m., I'm in seeing my counselor at the VA because I saw her back in 2009 when I was bad, and then I got better. Right. And then I thought I was good. And then no, I realized 18 months ago that I want to stay good. I don't want to just get good. I want to stay good. And the reason is I talk out what I'm living and what I'm experiencing. Some people journal, some people meditate, some people yoga. I've done it all. I talk shit out. And this podcast now, I talked about that. I did TEDx a couple of years ago, and the whole TEDx was transforming your pain into passion to define your purpose.
Ooh.
I can sit here and bitch all day about what the VA did or didn't do, what the DOD did or didn't do, how my fucking recruiter lied to me. We all can. But instead, it's made me the man I am today. I wouldn't be where I'm at today if not for the military. I wouldn't have the drive. I wouldn't have the passion, the understanding, the teamwork, the camaraderie, all these things that I love about myself. I wouldn't have people like you, right? I wouldn't fanboy at the MIC, right? Like I saw you like 3 or 4 times, and like I told myself, oh, right, he's too busy. He doesn't have time for me. I went through that whole, no, but like I did that, right? I had the whole imposter syndrome mentality, right? And I'm like, man, I just start fucking talking, Andy. Like I listen to Les Brown almost daily, right? You got to be hungry. And I'm like, he's just a fucking guy. Just go talk to him, say what's up, tell him you appreciate what he does, and see what happens. But that level of vulnerability isn't taught in the military. Mm-hmm. And we need that in the civilian world. We have to admit, oh, hey, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
I need support on this. I don't know where I'm going. Those aren't questions, right, that you would feel, most people, myself included, wouldn't feel comfortable saying in the military. You're just expected, well, look at the regulation, figure it out, right? Those are the answers you get. And the fact that we now as grown men can have this conversation and be like, hold on, asking for support is a sign of strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. Means you're not an idiot.
Right? Well, there's that old Chinese proverb where it's like, hey, would you rather be quiet and have people think you're an idiot, or raise your hand and speak out and prove that you're an idiot? It's like, well, no, that's bullshit. Fuck that.
Yeah. You're
human, and you're willing to learn, and you're willing to listen. You're willing to be vulnerable. And like any other time, we know this in the military, and in the civilian world it applies too. If you're in a room with 50 people and you ask a question, there's more than one other person that had the exact same question, but wasn't vulnerable enough to ask the question.
Yes.
Like you talk about, hey, you want a show for everyone else, right? My first thought was, all right, well, I was military police. There's Checkpoint Charlie, right? I'm a career counselor now. There's the recruiting show. I don't know what it is, but that's Marine Corps recruiters, right? And I'm like, fuck, I could do an 88 mic show. I could do a truck driving show. I could talk about how stupid it is, right? Like you're talking about boots on ground, grunts. I'm like, fuck that. Death before dismount. That's the fucking, that's the 88 mic, right? That's the 88 mic way. We don't get out. We got to take a shit off the side of the truck. You got to piss off the side. We're getting contact, sit in the fucking cab. Right? Like, and get excited about who we are, right? Like, I don't take it like, but being honest with who you are and seeing opportunity and putting yourself out there and be like, yeah, why not? Right? Why not is not a rhetorical question. The fact that you said why not and you've built these empires and you already know it, but you impact us. I'll speak for veterans out here. You impact us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You're the one that inspires us to do what we do, and the goal is that we inspire others, right? Because killing yourself isn't funny. It's funny, right, until it isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I'll find a way to laugh about it, but I don't recommend you do it.
Yeah, highly recommend, right? And we've all been there because that's the opposite, right? If we don't laugh and we don't live, there's the opposite, right? Because there's only three. I'm writing a book, and recently I interviewed this psychologist, great guy, Dr. Bill Crawford. But he just said, my book is all about words and vernacular. And like he says, there's only three things we have to do. We have to be born, we have to die, and we have to live. Everything else is beyond that is a choice. How we choose to show up, what we choose to be our priority. Like you said, putting the veteran thing in the past and choosing, okay, here's my BHAG. This big, hairy, audacious goal. That's the fucking mountain. Okay. That's a great place to start. Right? It's complicated, no doubt, but what are the things that we have to do? What are the simple steps we have to take today to get there? And at first, your BHAG is sometimes surviving today.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, I was at a different point. You said something that I really liked and I wanted to speak on for a quick sec. That was, why not? Okay, so I'll share something about myself in the hopes that you and others can relate to the thought. I've probably since, I want to say 8th grade, since my first dance that I went to, which I'm pretty sure it's the 8th grade dance. It might have been freshman in high school, but I went to a dance, and this is before I had ever had any alcohol or weed. So I'm totally sober, and the lights are down, and they're playing 90s R&B, and I'm grinding on chicks. Like, I had such horrible crippling social anxiety. I mean, I was the polar opposite of the person that I am now. Crippling social anxiety. Couldn't stand in front of the class. I was that kid that the teacher had to save. My voice would crack, and I couldn't speak. I couldn't talk to girls. I wouldn't stand up for myself. I was bullied. Very, very opposite of me now. But yet, when that music came on and the lights came down, I lit up, and I was so happy. And all of a sudden, I'm dancing with all these hot chicks that I otherwise would never have talked to. And all of a sudden, they like my vibe because I'm dancing and I'm smiling and I'm feeling good. And ever since then, I've loved dance. As I got older, dance became less and less cool. Mm-hmm. Dance became something that my friends would call gay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so it was like the only time I danced would be at a school dance when I'm drinking alcohol. And I was finally stopped caring enough about what the people around me thought.
When there was a heterosexual reason for it.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Even though I know that I'm a straight male and I love chicks, the thought of my friends calling me gay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but back then it was, we used to say the F word all the time. The F word in reference to gay, which I don't want to say. And I was so afraid of being called that. Then fast forward into college, I'm a frat boy, I'm the president, and I love dance more than ever. But I would primarily do it when I was drinking at our frat parties.
Yeah.
And then I was on tables, I was a machine. Dance offs with my bros, dance off with girls, machine. Then I've got a couple years when I'm like a teacher and a personal trainer before I joined the Marines at 25. And in that time, it's the same thing. Only really dancing when it's just like homies in my apartment, close friends, or got a lot of booze in me, and we're taking party buses out to clubs. Mm-hmm. And then I joined the Marine Corps. Now I'm an infantry officer. Now I'm definitely not dancing until got a half a bottle of liquor in me. Why? Because an infantry officer isn't this big flamboyant dancer. That's not your role. That's not your identity. You are not a dancer as an infantry officer. You're a fucking warrior. You are a killer. You're a grunt. That is all the identity that consumed me and all of us. And honestly, that's needed to win wars. I don't ever want to change that.
Yep.
I don't want to convince the military to change that. No. Raising and maintaining an army that can go to battle and win is not real life. And so there are many aspects of normal human existence and interaction that have to change for us to win. We can't just win. We have to be the best in the world. Because if you're not the best, then you lose. Then you got to speak Russian or Mandarin. Okay? And that does not happen.
Nope.
But coming out of the military, I made a career for myself as an artist. And it started with a blog and then a book. I'm a published author, which is a form of artistry. Then I start the nonprofit, and I stopped with the artistry because I just got consumed by this nonprofit. Yeah. It just was everything and nothing existed. Then, after a year of that, I was really burnt out. And I'm like, okay, I set out with a goal to be an author and to write books and then make short films and longer films. And eventually I wanted a production company that told the stories of my family. I never had any desire to tell all military shit. That was never my dream. But I started making funny videos on YouTube to sell my book. And I realized I was a better filmmaker than I thought I would be at the very beginning. So then I started putting in my repetitions as a filmmaker, telling short stories, then longer stories, television shows, movies. Started Vet TV, and I'm an artist, but my art is I'm a filmmaker. And I still have had this desire to dance, but I was always afraid of being ripped on in a meme in the comments on social media for being gay. That was my fear. That held me back from being exactly who I am and doing the things that bring me joy proudly, with no shame. It was the thought that my buddies and all of the grunts and the meme pages and the groups would just meme me. That was my fear. That held me back. And then finally, a couple things happened. One of them was I got memed and ripped on for other reasons. So it's like, well, it's going to happen regardless.
Right.
Yep.
And then a good buddy of mine from college, one of my frat bros, he saw me, and all my buddies have been so supportive, and they've been fans, and they've subscribed and sent love. I had my college frat bros, they sent me laser rangefinders when I was in Afghanistan. They were like, yo, I want to know if there's a group of them, they pitched in money. They're like, we want to know how many people got killed using our laser rangefinders. Like, give us credit for the kills, you know? Like, my buddies were so sick. And I saw one of them at a wedding after Vet TV had been doing well for a couple years before COVID. And he was a little drunk, and he pulls me aside and he goes, look, Danny, I know you think you're hot shit and all, but no matter what, you're still a fucking gay piece of shit. Okay? No matter what. I don't care how big. He's like, no, look at me. Give me a little slap. He said, you're still a fucking gay piece of shit. And I love you for it. So don't ever fucking change. So it's like, no matter what.
Yeah.
My friends are going to call me gay anyways. So I might as well be exactly who the fuck I want to be. No matter what. Someone's going to fucking hate it. Someone's going to rip on you. No matter what you do or who you are. So you might as well be exactly who you are and follow exactly what brings you joy. And know that some people are going to love you 100 times more for it.
Yeah.
And some people will always still rip on you for it.
An artist is an artist.
That was this massive realization I had recently.
I've always looked at it like I've always loved poetry. Like it's always been something that, for some context, like I lost my dad at 6 years old to suicide. So I've had a very long history with suicide. Poetry was the first thing that actually brought me any kind of emotional expression. It was the first thing I found that allowed me to actually relieve the pain and the suffering that I was going through as a kid. And so like for me, it's been so weird because, I if you would have told me where I would be right now 10 years ago, I couldn't fathom it, right? Like I'm a TikTok influencer. I'm a sniper, right? I'm a staff sergeant in the military. Like I'm doing all of this other super manly shit. And in 2020, I was like, I looked at myself and he was like, I'm going to make a TikTok video. right? Like the last thing I would have expected me to do at that time would be that, right? And I did. And now I have like 500,000 followers on TikTok looking at me talking about things like suicide and PTSD and trauma and all of these really deep, dark stuff. I post poetry, right? Like what I've always understood is that an artist is an artist no matter what. I don't care if you're a filmmaker, an author, a poet. Like when you look at art, art is an expression. That's all it is, right? Whether you're expressing yourself through filmmaking or poetry or dance or music, it doesn't matter. It's the value that art brings to other people has nothing to do with what they see. It's what you give, right? And so I think when you can recognize what brings you joy in what you give, you are an artist. If you don't recognize the value in what you give, you're not an artist, right? If you're just doing stuff to give to people because you're like, I just want you to have it. I want to make money from this. That's not an artist. You're working for your money, right? Like, but when you know, like what I do is I write poems and I post them because it's joy for me, right? It's something like that's my emotional expression, and I share that with other people. But I don't need to share it with other people. I could care less if other people read them. I could care less if other people see it. All I care about is the value it gives to me. And that makes me an artist. That makes me who I am, and I'm willing to be that person. If people criticize it, I don't give a shit. You've never been through my life, right? And I hold no, I hold no hatred or, any spite to anyone that looks at me and judges my life. If you do that, you go ahead. But I know as a fact that the people that would do that have no understanding of what I've been through and how I've had to make my choices, even though I've written a book about it, even though I've posted about it 100,000 times, right? Like nobody really knows the decisions that I've had to make because I've made, somewhere between 6 to 36,000 decisions a day for the last 32 years. No one can understand that. And I live with that, and I understand so much about that it is physically impossible for someone else to understand someone else's life. And when you live in comfort with that understanding, you get real comfortable with yourself. And you say, I know who I am. I've made mistakes. I'm not perfect. I'm not beautiful. But at the same time, I am also as perfect as I have made myself. And I am continuing to craft the most perfect version of myself into who I want to be, not the expectation of people that don't understand my choices.
Two things that I think of right away. First is people's opinion of you is none of your business. It took me years, and it's that simple. Like to me, it was that simple, right? People's opinion of you is none of your business. Not my original. Also, Les Brown talks about. He says it a little more eloquently than that, but it can't be that limiting self-belief. The other thing is, as you guys are talking, right? I'm thinking dance. I'm thinking poetry. In my head, I'm thinking, what is it I do? And I don't know that answer yet, but what I do know is I love being around A players. I love people that commit to what they do. I never been to New York. You're Donnie. You're from New York, right? The Bronx. Yeah. Okay. So you're from New York, or Queens. I'm sorry. I'd never been to New York ever until like 3 months ago, and I remember sitting there. And what I realized in New York was people are really they doubled down on who they are. Right? I'm in the Midwest. Like folks, pretty much there's pretty very homogeneous population compared to what you can see in New York in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But what I loved about it, I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't wear that. But the fact that they're right, or I wouldn't act that way. I wouldn't say this. But the more committed people are to who they are individually, the more in love I am with that. I'm like, yes. Yes. Like you're sitting there talking about dancing. And I was like, this morose motherfucker. Like, let's go. Right? Let's get some fucking tights on his ass. Let's get the nutcracker. And I'm bringing the boys. But no, seriously, it's like... And then part of me, too, in my head, I'm like, fuck, you're right. I wish I could dance some days. Right? You go to a wedding or you go to events, you get a straight dude that can dance and he knows he can dance, good night. puts me out of business. You put me out of business.
Yeah.
Right? I got a couple good jokes at best. If the music's playing, my material's useless. I can't. I got the Cupid shuffle, right? Left, right, left, right. I got that one down now where it's like you lean in, you lean out, and then it's like I learned that one. I got 5, maybe 5. You know, the fact that you can do it, you're good at it, you know you're good at it, and also the fact. Let's go back to what I said earlier about the pain. Transform the pain into passion to find your purpose. You know what? You are right. You let all these people all this time tell you what you couldn't do. You're right. That's a fact. Right? And that was the limiting self-belief. I talk about it, right? It's important that we capture that. We can't dismiss that because it's going to come back up. Right? So I've worked through this vernacular working with different coaches, and it's you start with I used to, right? So I used to prevent others from letting me live my best life. And now, great transitional word, and now, right? Insert your sentence, so that the result you want to live. Mm-hmm. Right? So for me, I used to get bullied for running my mouth, right? And now I run my mouth, but I found a new audience. Yeah. So that, right? I changed my audience so that I feel confident saying what I have to say, and I give to those that are ready to receive.
Yeah.
If people tell me to go fuck myself, that's fine, so long as you articulate it based on things I've said or done. Because for like you said, the people that are committed to you, whether they support you personally or they support what you're doing, they'll come out. Yeah. You talk about birds. Birds under distress will make more noise. They call out because they're already being attacked. They're already, being victimized in those moments. They're going to call out. Same thing happened with us humans. How often do we struggle in silence? No, go out there. I put it on Facebook 3 days ago saying I was lonely, right? Afterwards, I was like, man, that was pathetic. But no, I reached out to who I had, right? And also acknowledged probably shouldn't have been in a bar. But I had a handful of people reach out to me on Saturday like, hey, you good? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Right? I was having that fucking woe is me moment, and I had no problem telling the world. Right? If I had been less confident, had I been insecure, had I been concerned about what other people thought about me, I wouldn't have put myself out there. Same with this podcast. This has evolved from being comfortable talking about junk removal and trash to, okay, hold on, let's get deeper. Yeah. What else do we want to share with the world?
I think
you talk about what brings you joy. This brings me joy.
Yeah. I think there's a negotiation that needs to happen in that idea of what other people think of me is not my problem, right? I think initially that's a very important thing for people who are very focused on people pleasing, but eventually there has to be some way of negotiating that, right? Because if I looked at my wife's opinion of me right now, that wouldn't go well for me, right? Like, because that's a foundational relationship for the structure of my life, right? Like, my wife's opinion of me very much matters, but I do need to be able to negotiate it with her. I need to be able to know that, like, Val, I'm struggling right now and I need support, that her opinion doesn't come down and crush me. Right? I need to be able to negotiate and say, hey, when you say this to me, this bothers me. Right? I need to be able to open up that communication and speak and express myself in a way that allows me to show this person that what they're doing is hurtful to me. Right? But initially, I do need to be callous to those people who aren't recognizing kind of the sanctity of who I am. Right? When I say this is who I am and those people don't believe me, right? For a lot of like younger people, it's their mom, their dad, their aunt, their uncle, they're grown-ups and they're adults in their lives that have always told them this is how you're supposed to be. Leaders, right? Military, it's leadership. Well, this is how you're supposed to to do things. I can't tell you how many times I've had, people tell me you shouldn't talk about feelings in the military. And I'm like, get the fuck over it. I'm going to do it. Now I've written a book about it. And now I talk about feelings in the military, even though I'm a sniper and an infantry, staff sergeant. Well, fuck you. I'm not going to do that. Right. I had to have the callous kind of mentality to look and say, you know what, I don't care about your opinion of me, because how I'm impacting people is helping, right? I see my results here. But eventually you want to help them come to that level or come to that realization. And that's how I think we change organizations. That's how we change lives. That's how we change, families, right? I think families are huge, especially right now, is like, we're really transitioning through this age kind of here's where the old military, that kind of old military feel of like, you have to do it the hard way, right? You have to do it the hard way. If you do it any other way, you're worthless. You didn't do it the right way, right? And now we're getting into the younger generations who are finding newer ways, less traumatic ways, easier ways. And we need to bridge that gap right now. And especially in families, like, we need to find a way to look back at people who have forced us to be callous in the past and see if we can bridge that gap with them and say, hey, in the past, this is how I felt, but this is who I am now. I'm comfortable. This is who I'm going to be. But I want to also bring you into this. I want to enjoy life with you. And how can we do that? So I think there's always a necessity to transition back to a negotiated form of opening up relationships and saying this needs to be something that we do together, right? Like, when I coach people for mental health, I never tell people you should cut off your mother, right? It's always their decision, right? Like, it happens all the time. Like, I think I need to cut off your mom or my mom. Well, like, why? Right? And then we talk about it. We have big conversation, right? And I'm never the one that says you need to do this, right? I'm always the one that says, why do you think you need to do this? And they express it, right? And then oftentimes the conversation goes to, I'm not going to cut her off, but I'm not going to listen to her anymore when she does this, right? And so it's a negotiation even within themselves and within the relationship. Usually there's conversations of like, my mother is, whenever she does this, I just can't listen to her. I just can't even give her the time of day. It doesn't even make sense, right? And so like there's this negotiation within yourself that says, when I recognize this is not true, right? And that's the first step. But the second step is always, how do I help them understand how I feel? Right. And I think that right there is the most valuable skill that anyone will ever attempt to learn, is how do you express yourself to others to help them understand how you feel without allowing them to impart their judgments on your personality, right? Mm-hmm. To where you lose yourself in their judgments, right? That, I think, is the most profound skill, and I think it's a remarkably important skill for veterans to really look at, because I think they have this attitude and mentality of, I need to be a superhero, right? I cannot fail. I cannot do wrong. I cannot make mistakes. I cannot embarrass myself. I cannot do this. And the reality is that you never needed to be a superhero in the military. You just had this culture that forced you to define yourself as such, and you've never taken the step back with the leadership that has the ability to see that people are fallible, that helped you understand that, to know that you can make mistakes and you can dismantle judgment within yourself and say, well, I fucked up. I know I did, but I'm not a terrible soldier. I just fucked up once, right? Like, and taking that into the civilian world, it can be lethal if you can't do that. Obviously. I think we all know that.
Yeah. I think we are trained to judge others. We are trained to be highly judgmental. Yeah. And as a result, we are trained to expect an intense level of judgment. And the example that I think really codifies it is that we were taught as a Marine officer, you are judged from your head to your toe the second you walk into a room. The Marines are going to look at, are your boots clean? Is your uniform crisp? Do you look like you are fit? Does your face look like you are fit with bearing? Do you exude confidence and knowledge with your appearance? Do you communicate with confidence? Right? All of this judgment is occurring every second you exist in the military. And I don't know for sure, but from what I've heard, I think the Marine Corps is, I don't know if the best or the worst about this, in terms of this highly judgmental, where your people are constantly trying to sniff out weakness and bullshit, and then find a reason to not respect you. And then further, we are told that perception is reality.
Yep.
If they perceive you to be this, well, that's reality. If they perceive you to be some fucking dancing hippie, well, then that is their reality. And further, your reputation will follow you for the rest of your career.
Yeah.
So the second you are branded as something earlier in your career, you're stuck forever.
Right.
So now everyone is deathly afraid of stepping too far outside the confines of being a robotic Marine officer, and they kind of narrow their personalities down and restrict themselves. They restrict the way they move, because anyone who's a little bit too expressive is going to be judged.
Yeah.
And that judgment will carry with you till the rest of your time in the Marine Corps. So everyone is afraid to be expressive, afraid to be themselves, afraid to be an individual, because you're also told you are no longer an individual.
Right.
Fuck your individuality. It means nothing. And that there is, I do see the value in that. I don't want to take that out of the military.
Right.
However, these are all mindsets that get ingrained in you.
Yeah.
And so now, you know, I've seen some Marines, like, they won't play and be silly with their kids in a group setting. There are other guys around. Right? And it's like, I remember seeing that and being like, and I remember feeling it too. I felt it. Like, I am still a child. I will always be a child when I'm around kids. Yeah. I used to do birthday parties for kids. I dressed up in superhero costumes, would organize like football parties, and I just love the energy of children, right? But when I was a Marine officer, I shut that down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a mindset that is important for warfighting.
Yep.
But it's something that we have to recognize, acknowledge it. And this is one of my big goals in life, is actually to have this taught in the exit process. We call it TRS, Transition Readiness Services.
ETS.
We call TAPS, TAM.
TAPS, yep.
Okay, right? So every branch has this thing where they teach you how to get a job through interviewing and writing resume writing. They teach you how to go to college. Very little about entrepreneurship. Teach you how to get into the trades.
Mm-hmm.
All I got to do is say what I just said for an hour. Hey, by the way, you've been wired this way.
Yep.
This helps the military function and win wars.
Yeah.
But these things are unhealthy to carry with you for the rest of your life.
Right.
They restrict the best mental health you can have, because they put restrictions on individuality and expression. And restrictions on those things decrease joy and happiness. And if that's what we want for our community, for our people, for the rest of our lives, if we want to maximize happy, joyous, excited living, making the most of life, that you have to let go of some of these wirings. You got to undo that wiring. And just being aware of it is the first step.
Yep.
So, sounds like
anti-asshole training.
Anti-asshole training.
But it also, right, you said an hour. That's a 1 hour podcast, right? That's in 1 hour. Dylan and I, and hell, I don't give a shit. You can come back on, right? That's a 1 hour. This is like Dylan and I talked about, I think, about a month ago. Him and I were sitting down in person and talking about, hey, what's the one thing you wish you could, or you want to teach people? And his thing was empathy. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. That's what you're saying. It's the, okay, hey, for the last X number of years, this mindset has kept you alive, has kept the military, whatever, the culture intact, and kept the nation safe, right? Because our job in the military is to win wars. That's it. Two-word mission statement. Win wars. Yeah. Right? Okay, your time in service is over. North, south, east, west. God bless. Now we need to reprogram you to be a functioning member of society. Yes. And the resume and all this other stuff is important. But if your mindset's not there, it's not there. When I worked for corporate America, I worked at Waste Management. I was known as the angry emailer because I learned the military way, bottom line up front, bluff. Yeah. So I wrote my emails in such a manner. You done fucked up. This is how you fucked up. This is the right, like, they didn't like that. I was like, I'm being very clear and concise. Yeah. Third grade reading level. But empathy training, and to what Dylan said earlier, and you did a little bit too, Danny, is be empathetic for yourself. In the military, you got your leadership, your subordinates, your peers, all these levels of people looking out for you, so you can look out for everybody else. You get in the civilian world, right? We can talk about I got your six and put up all the fucking hashtags we want. You got to take care of you. Mm-hmm. You're the one late at night that has to lay down and put your head on that pillow. Yep. Mm-hmm. You're the one that has to make those decisions that are simple in nature but very complicated when you're fucking soup sandwich up in the fucking head. When you have those bad days, when you're using or abusing alcohol and drugs, when you're going through whatever's happening today and you're also living in the past, right? It's like you have anxiety about the future and anger about the past while you're depressed. That's a really good cocktail for a really, really bad night and a really bad life.
Yeah. It's a really good, the ingredients of your next drink.
Yep.
It is. That's it, right? I think about it. It's like you're angry, you're depressed, and you're anxious all at the same time. It's a really weird place, and I've gone through it. And I went through the other thing is I went through my last deployment. I got divorced, and I'm like, okay, I got this. I've been deployed. I know what it's like to come back home. I'm just gonna check all the boxes. I'm gonna be fine. God, I was a big ball of fuck because I thought it was just check the box. Right? The first time it was ignorance. The second time it was perseverance. And neither time it worked. Yeah. Both times I had a point where I didn't want to be here, mm-hmm. and I was right there. I was in that moment. My ex-fiance was there. I had the gun to my head, and I said, "There's two choices to make here, and I don't want to make the one choice." I got myself to that point because I thought I could fast track it, right? Because in the military too. Which like one of those you see the other people do, and you're like, oh, if I just follow in their footsteps, I won't die. Well, that's not how it is. You have to embrace it, right? I talk about embracing the suck, but it does suck. No longer being in the military sucks, right? And I'm still in. I still got a foot in. I put the uniform this weekend. It sucks not being around what you know, where you're confident. Like Marine Corps officer, it was pretty obvious. Here's the standard. Meet the standard. Mm-hmm. Right? See ball, hit ball.
When you get,
but then day one in the civilian world,
you got to make your own standard.
I'm an entrepreneur now. Now what the fuck? Entrepreneurship. I mean, the fact that you've gone to this extreme. Dylan joined us. I've been 7 years. I haven't had a job in 7 years. Yeah. I've done my own thing. And to your point, it's complicated.
Yeah.
I was thankful that my parents owned a business for 30 years, so I saw it. I had more of a head start than most, but it's a struggle to go from veteran to entrepreneurship. That is a huge. I mean, that's one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really is.
All right. Well, let's put a bow on this thing. How can we support you get to that mountaintop? What can we, myself, Dylan, the listenership here, what can we do to continue to support you while you support us?
Oh. I think if there are successful, well-connected people in your network.
Mm-hmm.
I think introducing them to both Irreverent Warriors and Vet TV is really it. Because generally, when anyone who comes and sees the nonprofit, but especially sees behind the scenes, the hundreds of people who are volunteering, working for free to do so much, they're blown away. Most nonprofits do not have this many volunteers taking on so much responsibility, and or have as little money as we do. We stretch $1 really far in terms of our impact per dollar. So, and then for veteran television, it generally kind of sells itself. You either like the television shows, you like the program, or you don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. Another thing, actually, is that part of what we want to do moving forward when we create a television show is we want to get other organizations, podcasts, artists included in the creation of the show, which is all writing. So we'll put a couple professional screenwriters in a room or Zoom, and then we surround them with people who have lived whatever experience the screenwriters are writing about.
Yeah.
Next level is to find people who are already leaders in our community that are part of things bigger than themselves and bring them in to help develop the shows. Because I want the perspective of leaders entering our stuff. It's very, very easy to get a bunch of former, E1s to 4s, 5s to, start telling stories, and they're just,
they're E4 Mafia
everything
stories.
is just fuck the leadership.
Yeah.
And
there's definitely a juvenile tone to veteran TV.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
So that has served its purpose, because what it does, it resonated with the either audience who is living that experience or who remembers that experience.
Correct. I deployed as a 22-year-old E4, and it's like I can go back there like that.
Yeah. Right. Get people telling barrack stories. I mean, shit just goes off the wall.
Oh yeah.
So what I want is for people that had higher positions of leadership, military, who are also now leaders, now that they're out.
In the
I
civilian
want
world,
them involved in giving screenwriters the visions they need to put the best shit to the page, which will end up on the screen.
Is the goal with Vet TV to do more of the serious?
Oh yeah, we're going to extend all the genres.
Okay, that's okay. So and that's what I've noticed, and that's a good direction. I think it's one of those, not really a bait and switch, but it's good to give a complete body of work to the consumer, and then let us decide what we're into. Because if it's all, dick and fart jokes, then we're limiting. Right? We're like.
You're going to lose.
I had a chance to meet you, right? Like I understood what you're doing with Rowan Warriors, right? Smiling and laughing through the pain, right? And then when I dug into Vet TV a little bit more, and then I saw Let's Talk About the War come out. I'm like, okay, hold on, this was a noticeable shift, and I am more. It's comfortable to watch Grunt's Life or some of the funnier programs, right? Checkpoint Charlie, whatever. That's funny. It's good. It's military humor. There's 100 Facebook groups that I can watch memes and get that military humor, and it's comfortable. But it's uncomfortable watching the other stuff. And when we're uncomfortable, that's where we grow. And that's those doses that I want, because you're right. I deployed as 22. Now I'm 38. I'm a father. I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to be a robust member of my community. And I'll go back to that dark spot and stupid shit and fun and blow off steam. But I need to get into the, okay.
How do I solve my next problem?
Here we are now, right? Understanding how I got where I'm at, hearing other people's words, that's very critical. And I commend you for that, because you could just stick with the dark humor and the comedy and give the people what they want. But moreover, it's important that you give the people what they need before they even realize what they need. We need it. We don't need another Mel Gibson hoorah movie. I need to hear other veterans saying what I'm thinking, because then it validates where I'm coming from. And now I want to share with others more than before. So I'm going to continue to support you. I already, actually, before we got on the call, I looked at the Warriors. I reached out to the guy that does the hike here in Wisconsin. I'm going to sponsor it with one of my companies, because I want to put my money, I want to put my money behind my mouth. I joke that my mouth writes a lot of checks and my ass has to cash them, and that's right. That's the fact, right? And I want to continue to support you and all the things. I challenge and I push our leadership to not just challenge yourself. Or obviously, there's the obvious ones with, get on a hike, watch Vet TV. But also be there for your fellow veterans, right? This is all for naught if we don't solve the bigger challenges with our community, right? Let's make this relationship less transactional, more transcending as we transform in this world, right? And like what you said, right? That the veteran life is in our past. What are we going to do now moving forward? It's there. It's an ember that burns, but let's not dump gasoline on a fire that doesn't need the flames anymore.
Yeah.
That life had a time and place. Let it stay there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good to take from the experience.
Yep.
But that is just one experience of many that we should think are awesome throughout our life.
Yeah. And if you're looking in the rearview mirror, you're not going to see what's in front of you. And you're not, these are the good old days. Today's the good old day.
Yes.
If you think about 20 years ago as only the good old days, you're missing out on the good stuff today.
Yeah.
The embracing your employees, playing with your kids, being part of a community, and seeing what's next. So I appreciate, Danny, you taking the time today. I appreciate you opening up. I appreciate Danny showing up. Donny can be for the masses, but Danny's for our community. And that's important. Dylan, as always, appreciate you. Danny, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way of doing it?
You don't.
Don't. Even better. I like it. It's fine. It's good. Go to a hike.
I'm just kidding. Find me on social media. Donny O'Malley.
I can honestly say I walked up to the convention. A couple emails later, we had you on the program. So, right, if people want you, also I encourage our listeners, if you are one of those senior leaders, 05, 06, higher up, if you are a sergeant major, reach out to Danny. Those are the voices that we also need to hear, because there's truth within that.
Yes.
That'll also be more well-rounded for the veteran community. Dylan, any final words before we close out the broadcast?
Just thank you. Thank you, Danny. I don't have, I've watched a few things from Vet TV, but I haven't had the opportunity. It's just not my thing, but maybe it will be, as I love to support fellow artists. Just thank you for being you, and continue to do so, and step into new territories.
Thank you. This has been so rad. I would love to do this again. I love this conversation so much.
Absolutely.
No, well, Danny, Dylan, absolutely. I will take you up on that, Danny. We will do check-ins. I'm going to continue to support you and the businesses. For all of our listeners, what we do is important. The way we show up every day as veterans in the civilian world, as we transform into the civilians that we know we can be, it's important. If you haven't heard it lately, I'm telling you right now, I'll leave you with these 2 words that matter more than anything.
Thank you.